Namaste, beloveds. During this tumultuous time that we are living through, I'm wanting to share with you some spiritual teachings that have been very fundamental and life-changing in my own life. And one of the teachings is the principle of non-attachment. And I can remember I've been hearing about it for years. And, having been on a spiritual path like many of you, I got very confused about it because on the one hand, we're meant to be full of compassion and love, and suddenly on the other hand, we're meant to be detached. And it felt like a very cold way of approaching life, as if we don't care. And then I began to learn that there's a big difference, a quantum difference between detachment and feeling unmoved in life and being utterly unattached to the material or the way things should be. And that actually non-attachment is extremely liberating and joyous and freeing for you, as it was in my life. And it was so useful to me during a time when great disaster struck. And we lost everything. My house burned down, and we were financially wiped out. And I was so grateful that a year before all that happened, I'd heard a beautiful and very inspiring teaching about the power of non-attachment. And I was sitting with Guru Mai, who is a very powerful and deeply wise, enlightened master in our time. And she gave this allegory, this story of non-attachment that forever changed the way that I view my material life, how I view the way things should be, that they're supposed to be the way they were in the past. And right now, in the case of COVID and all that's going on with jobs falling away, that there's an attachment and a gripping on to the old, to the known, to the norm, and a fear of letting go of all of that, because what's going to happen, when we finally come back to norm? Will it even be the norm anymore? And so we get attached to the way things should be, the way things have always been, and the way that we want them to be in the future. And coming to a place of non-attachment can allow you to have a very light relationship, because the truth of the matter, we can't change just what's happened worldwide with this pandemic. We can't change what is, but we can find a way that we can open and welcome a new way forward that is all embracing and healthy, which will allow us to be inspired to find inspiring and motivated and passionate ways to live life freshly in the new norm. So anyway, I wanted to share with you this beautiful and inspiring story that forever changed my relationship to the material things in life. And what Guru Mai said was, once upon a time, there was this enlightened master many, many, many years ago. And he was a very wealthy man. He was an ancient Raja. And he had gotten around him many devotees who wanted to be in his presence and experience the wisdom that he had. Now, he'd grown old in his years, and because he was a Raja, a prince, he also came from a wealthy, noble family and had factories and shipping companies and had a huge amount of material wealth amassed. Now, he happened to be the owner of a set of 12 teacups, which were the rarest, most prized teacups in the world. And he had 11 of the 12 that would make the set complete. Now, this is a teacup set that had been passed down for generations, from one generation of Rajas to the next. And so throughout his life, he kept looking to see if he could find where was the final teacup that could complete his set. Now, he was walking through a dusty old village. He'd gotten into his 80s and had grown old in his years, and he was walking with one of his devotees. And they came through this dusty old village, And there in the village was a bric-a-brac shop, an antiques shop. And in that dusty window, right there in the middle, was the teacup he had been looking for his whole life. And he turned to his devotee and he said to him, "You know, I've been looking for this my entire life long, and here it is finally. We should go into that bric-a-brac shop and speak to the owner." So anyway, the owner of this shop was peering through the window, and he could see who was standing there, that famous Raj, who was also an enlightened master. And he had been waiting his entire life for him to finally pass through his village. And so he turned to his wife and he said, "Oh, my dear, we're going to be wealthy people. We're going to be able to buy a palace on the banks of the holy river Ganga in Rishikesh and die in that splendor by this river that is the holiest of rivers in India. Go make some tea for us, dear. All of our karma has finally come home." So he opened the door and he bowed to the master and he welcomed and he said, "Welcome, Swamiji. How can I help you?" And the master said, "Well, I noticed you have a teacup in the center of your display window, and I would like to buy that teacup." And practice in his ways, the shopkeeper said, "Well, that happens to be the rarest teacup on this earth. It is an astronomically expensive teacup, and I'm sorry, but it's a priceless teacup. And it will come at an astronomical price." And quietly the master said, "Yes, I am fully aware of the pricelessness of this teacup." And so the shopkeeper named this exorbitant price. And quietly the master just said, "No, I know the value of that teacup, and I'll take it at this price. It's a fair price. It's the right price. It's the only price I will pay." Now, completely disgruntled and shocked that he's going to have to bargain like he's at a fish market with an enlightened master who's also a prince. And he starts scrambling in his head and he thinks, well, okay, if I cut the price of the teacup in half, we'll still be able to buy a manor house on the banks of the holy river Ganga in Rishikesh. And he said, "Oh my, master, you drive a very hard bargain. And I mean, it's just for you, but for you, I'm willing to cut the price in half." And the master just quietly heard that, and he said, "No, I said I would only take it at this price. It's the right price, and it's the fair price, and it's the only price I'm willing to pay." Now, once again, the shopkeeper cannot believe this is happening. He's waited all these decades for the master to come in, and he's having to bargain again. And he goes inside his head and he thinks, well, if I do it one more time in half, I will at least be able to buy a very large house on the banks of the holy river Ganga. It won't be a palace, it won't be a manor house, but at least it will be a very large house. And we can live out our days in that splendor. And he said, "Swamiji, I can cut it in half once again, but that is my final offer. That is the least I can give it to you for." And the master looked at him and said, "I'm sorry, I will only take it at this price. It's the right price. It's actually the fair price. And it's the only price I will buy it at." And so together, the master and his devotee left the shop. Now they got only 50 feet down the road, and the door slams open, and out comes running the shopkeeper. "Master, master, please come back. I'll give the teacup to you at your price. Now, while he's wrapping up the teacup and the master's paying, the devotee has spied above the counter this beautiful sword. And he thinks, I'm going to take that sword, and it'll be my sword of truth. I'll put it over the master's picture so it'll cut away the demons of the mind. And so, thinking that he can just imitate his master, he very casually says to the shopkeeper, while you're wrapping that teacup, I've noticed that there's a beautiful sword above the counter there. I'd like to purchase that sword. And the shopkeeper looks up, sees the sword. He says, that is a priceless, ancient sword that is a saber that's engraved and centuries old. It's going to come at an exorbitant price. And of course, he names the price. Now, the disciple, thinking he can imitate the master, said, well, I will only take it at this price. It's a fair price. It's the right price. It's the only price I will take it at. And of course, he reduces it by half, and the shopkeeper reduces it by half again. And then the disciple says, well, I will only take it at my price. It's the right price, it's the fair price, and it's the only price I will take it at. And the two of them leave the shop, and they continue walking down the road, and walking, and walking, and walking, and the devotee keeps looking back, and the shopkeeper hasn't come running after him. And he said, Master, why hasn't the shopkeeper come running after me like he did after you? And the master looked him deeply in the eyes and he said, do you still lust for that sword? Oh, yes, master, but you were looking for that teacup for nearly 80 years. Didn't you thirst to have that teacup? The master remained silent, and the devotee realized he'd overstepped the bounds. And finally, the master said, the reason that shopkeeper didn't come out is because he can smell your lust. He feels your greed, and he knows that tomorrow you're going to come back and you're going to be his first customer. And you're going to buy it at his final price. But master, how could it be that you were looking for a teacup for nearly 80 years and you didn't lust after it? You didn't feel this thirst to have it. What was your secret? And the master answered, I'll tell you my secret. My secret is that every night, before I go to sleep, I kneel down on the ground and I offer to God all the material things in my life that has graced me in that day. I offer up all my businesses. I actually see them burned to the ground. I offer up my beloved grandchildren and my beautiful wife, and I go to bed an impoverished man. And every morning, I get up and I get down on my knees, and I pray to God and thank God that for one more day, God has loaned me these priceless gifts. Everything is on loan. It always has been, and it always will be. Now, I heard this story, and it touched me deeply when I very innocently began doing a practice every night where I would go to bed and I would review what I have in my life. A beautiful marriage, and I would look at the business and the material, the house, the cars, and I would just offer it all up to God, to life, to the universe. And every morning I would get up, and the first thing I would do is get down on my knees and thank God, thank life, that for one more day I had these priceless gifts in my life. Now, a remarkable thing started to happen over that next year. I found that not only did I have a great and deep appreciation for all the material and the beautiful friendships and the love I had in my life, but I developed a very light relationship to it, knowing that it would be offered up every night. And so I began to feel so much more joy, so much more free, and actually so much more blessed to have these beautiful gifts in my life that I completely understood were all on loan. A year after I heard this story, there were megafires in Malibu, in our little tiny beach shack, our beach cottage. It burned to the ground, and our cars were also exploded, and we were financially wiped out. But I realized that I had been blessed beyond all measure to have those beautiful things in my life, the beautiful people, the beautiful things on the material plane, on the physical plane. And forevermore, I've had a very light relationship to what should be, what is, what has been. And during this time of COVID, I feel like it's an invitation to all of us. Maybe it's time you did this practice every night. And maybe every morning you got up and thanked for what you do have. I find that gratitude is a magnet for grace. When your heart is full of gratitude, it's like life says, more will be added unto this person. Instead of being a cup half empty person, you're a cup half full person. And life loves to offer you more opportunities, more ways of and directions in life, more doors open for you. All because you are willing to be unattached to the material, the physical, and how things should be, and what it should be after all of this, in this tumultuous time that we're living through, when this period of time finishes, which I believe it will eventually. Even non-attachment to what that's going to look like. So why not give it a shot? Do a divine experiment. See if you find the same joy and surrender and non-attachment as I do in doing this practice. And a heartfelt namaste.